of the highest speed, the greatest precision and the smoothest swing, now on BBC Two, in Sunday Grandstand.
It's been 55 years since Grand Prix motor racing took place at Donington Park. Today sees its return with the European Grand Prix, the third round of the Formula One season. Hello, good afternoon. Well, as expected, the weather here at Donington Park is damp and drizzly, to say the very least, and that could prove to be a real leveller to the qualifying domination of the Williams team. They occupy the front row of the grid in the shape of Alain Prost and Britain's Damon Hill.
Now on the power, and he has got to beat his time of 1 minute 10.871 to reduce his already pole position time. 1 minute 10.871, and that's it. 4/10 of a second faster for Alain Prost.
Damon Hill, we're now on board with Damon Hill, and this is his first flying lap.
Damon Hill has only got to go round Goddard, the left-hander now, and I'm expecting him to go up into second place quite comfortably, which would give Williams-Renault first and second places on the grid. He crosses the line, and he has done so. Alain Prost holds provisional pole position from his teammate Damon Hill.
I hope it's dry, I really do. I mean, it probably suits our car better as well. I think our performance advantage will be more useful in the dry. And anyway, you don't want it to rain on a Grand Prix. You know, want the sun to come out.
Track is not easy when it's wet, but today I was motivated to go for the pole, even if it was on wet conditions.
It's not dry, and conditions today could well suit Ayrton Senna, the current championship leader. With a first and second place already this season, Senna's McLaren remains the main threat to the Williams. Also on the second row of the grid, the precocious talent of Michael Schumacher in the Benetton, third fastest in final practice. As well as Damon Hill, 4 other British drivers. Johnny Herbert in the Lotus just missed a place on the podium in Brazil, equaling his best ever result. Derek Warwick knows Donington well from his sports car days. Warwick is yet to get in the Formula One points in his footwork. And Martin Brundle's Ligier hasn't enjoyed the best of fortunes this season either. He's yet to finish a race. But his teammate, Mark Blundell, has started brilliantly. 3rd in South Africa, 5th in Brazil. But just to show you how bad conditions were earlier this morning at Donington, this is Mark Blundell during practice, spinning into the gravel and escaping without too much damage. Well, the crowds have been pouring into Donington from first light. As many as 60,000 had been talked of, but the really awful conditions here may well reduce that number considerably. Nonetheless, a wonderful atmosphere building, and for so many Donington fans, a real celebration that Grand Prix motor racing is back for the first time since 1938. Well, Murray Walker was a teenager back in 1938. Sorry to mention that, Murray, but a lovely, emotional day for you as well.
Yeah, it certainly is, Bob, because I came here as a schoolboy before the war in the what people regard as the golden age of motor racing. I don't, actually. I think we're in the golden age now. But it's hats off to everybody who has worked so hard to get Donington into a Grand Prix state. Tom Wheatcroft, who owns the circuit, is the only private owner of a Grand Prix circuit in the world, has spent a gigantic amount of his own money, and he's got some very efficient people who work with him, and they've done a superlative job. And Britain has got the second Grand Prix that it so richly deserves.
A good decision, Murray, to bring it to Donington?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I mean, the only alternative was Brands Hatch, which is not in Grand Prix running order at the present moment. Donington is a natural place. There's a gigantic catchment area of people here, though unfortunately not so many of them are going to be here today as we had hoped for. But Donington is a super circuit. A lot of the drivers, notably Alain Prost, were not very complimentary about it before they came here.
Not too many overtaking places.
No, but I was talking to Prost about it last night, and he said, look, I've changed my mind. I think the circuit is excellent. Damon Hill, who could do very well here today because he's driven here in Formula Ford, Formula 3, Formula 3000 and now Formula 1, likes it very much, of course. And I haven't actually come across anybody who was rude about it. And the section from the Redgate corner, which is just behind me, up to McLean's, is probably the best viewing section of any Grand Prix in the world for spectators.
OK, well, Murray, it's been a long, long wait, hasn't it, for Grand Prix motor racing to return to Donington, but that long wait and all that hard work has now been rewarded at last. Ray Stubbs reporting.
55 years have elapsed since Donington last vibrated to the sound of Grand Prix racing cars.
One of the most spectacular things I've ever seen in my life, to sit here and watch these cars swaying from side to side, beautifully under control as they come down to this corner.
Nuvolari round Redgate with only one lap to go. The most exciting moment ever in my life was the first lap of the 1937 Grand Prix with the 16-cylinder.
It was one of the golden ages of motor racing, and I'm very lucky and privileged to have lived through it and to have seen it here.
Yes, here he comes, here he comes. Here's the winner flashing down the back of Scotty at about 160 miles an hour, 165.
The 30s was a very different era, but some things never change. The popularity of motor racing meant the queues were as long then as they are today. And the memories of those halcyon days are extra special to those who were drawn here like a magnet.
One of the outstanding memories is just getting here, because there weren't any motorways in those days. I remember we left North London, where I lived at the time, got in the car, drove up the A5, and there was an absolutely unprecedented crowd the first year. The auto unions and Mercedes were here, something like 100,000 people, which was incredible for a motor racing meeting in those days. And then you arrived here, there was this fantastic atmosphere. Everything along here, behind me, was solid trees in those days. They've all been taken down, partly to help the airport, which is behind me, and partly to help the viewing. So it was a very different atmosphere at the course. It was a lot narrower. The bridge down there, they actually went underneath the bridge, and when they got to Coppice, they went between the farmhouse and the farm buildings through the farmyard, and there was a no passing rule there. So if you can imagine a Mercedes-Benz coming towards you through the farmyard, absolutely flat out, it was an absolutely magical experience.
Donington was Britain's first real road racing circuit. Laid out on the public roads of the East Midlands, it was an immediate success with racegoers. No helmets in those days, and no seatbelts either, although that was no bad thing when a quick exit stage left was required. It was in 1935 that Donington hosted its first Grand Prix. The cars on the grid roared away to start a race of over 300 miles, and the checkered flag would eventually be seen first by Britain's Dick Shuttleworth. The average speed, 69 miles per hour. If Senna goes at that pace, he thinks he's stalled. But by 1937, the British had to take a back seat, thanks to the expanding technology of Germany. Mercedes-Benz, the Silver Arrows, were ruling the roost, and alongside them, another German team, Auto Union. The difference in the cars was plain to see. The race took 3 hours to complete, but with the German cars 4 times as powerful than the rest, and capable of speeds of 170 miles per hour, the outcome was obvious.
The checkered flag's all ready. Oh, this is grand. The sun's shining. Donington has never, I think, had a better day here. Now, here he's just coming up now over the rise. Rosemeyer gets the checkered flag, winner of the Donington Grand Prix.
In those days, it was Tazio Nuvolari who was the most exciting driver of the times. His distinctive red cap was his trademark. The Italian was on the grid when the Duke of Kent signalled the start of the 1938 Donington Grand Prix. But it was the Second World War that was just around the next corner, and that 1938 race was Donington's last Grand Prix, till today, of course. At 46, Nuvolari drove to victory, and in the history of the sport he has left an indelible mark on fans and contemporaries alike.
Fazio Nuvolari was a teammate. We raced together, and to me, in my era, was the greatest driver there ever was. We used to go in some places on circuit during practice to try to find out why he was going so fast, and we could see that he had probably, certainly, faster reflex than we had. He was taking chances, but we were taking chances too. But I think he had faster, much faster reflex than we had. He was a great driver.
The great drivers of 1993 are here today, and Donington is ready to resume its love affair with Grand Prix racing. The ghosts of the 30s have certainly made their presence felt, and they live on in the parts of the old track that still remain. Starkey's Bridge sits proudly alongside part of the circuit they'll race on today. In the 30s, the cars took off at the Melbourne Rise. That hasn't disappeared either, but it's not part of today's track. It serves as a service road. Today is an important day in the history of British motorsport. Then excited schoolboys of the 30s have returned to toast Donington's return to Grand Prix racing. And it's all been brought about by Donington's owner, multi-millionaire Tom Wheatcroft. A lifelong fan, it's Wheatcroft who's driven a 15-year campaign to bring the world's top cars back here. And at 70, he was on his track himself last week, in a Mercedes that contested the 1938 race.
Donington started as an hobby. I thought, on any other circuit you can make it pay, I can. So I bought it. I applied many years ago for 2 Grand Prix in England. It's been such a long wait and such an hard fight to get it. Everything's been uphill battle, and being the only private-owned race Grand Prix race circuit for Formula 1 Grand Prix, I'm quite proud.
Donington is Tom Wheatcroft, and Tom Wheatcroft is Donington. Because he's such an outgoing, friendly, generous man, and everything here is him, everything takes its time from him, and as you rightly say, it's a very pleasant, relaxed, almost pre-war atmosphere, but with a great deal of organisation and administration as well.
That means an inflation rate that's taken the Donington staff from 11 to 700 plus for today. 18,000 tonnes of gravel have been taken on for safety measures. Communications have been installed for a TV audience estimated in the region of 500 million. In terms of tradition, Donington has no problems. What it's eager to demonstrate is that it deserves a regular place on the Formula 1 calendar.
We've got to put on a show that isn't just perfect, it's got to be even better than that. We've got a one-off shot to keep Grand Prix racing here. We think we can do it. We've shown it with motorcycles. We've turned an ailing event into a world beater. We want the Grand Prix to stay here in some form or other, and we'll be making sure on Sunday there's no second bites back. It's got to be good, it's got to be the best, and it will be.
Wonderful pictures, wonderful nostalgia, which you've entered into in the last few days, because we've got some lovely pictures of you in what is, Murray, a Maserati, 1957 Maserati 250F, yes?
It is. Tom Wheatcroft said, would you like to come up here and drive something, Murray? And I said, my goodness, I would, Tom. What would you like to drive? I said, I would like to drive my dream car, the 1957 Maserati. That's the car that the great Juan Manuel Fangio won the World Championship in. And I tell you, Bob, I thought I was really flying.
What sort of speeds were you doing?
Oh, I don't know, about 90 miles an hour maximum, but I mean, it's absolutely paralytic compared with what they're doing today, or will be doing today, even in the wet conditions.
Difficult to handle, Murray?
No, I'm not a great driver, and I can honestly say that that car is the most forgiving and tolerant motor car I've ever driven. It seemed to invite you to go faster, and when you did, if you made a mistake, it seemed to shrug its shoulders and put it right for you. It was one of the high points of my life, honestly.
Speeds will be a bit different today, won't they?
Well, yes, they will be very different today, because even in the appalling conditions that we've got at the moment, and Bob, I honestly think it's getting a bit brighter now, people have said there's a drier front coming along, and I hope they're right, although Senna won't hope so.
But do you think the safety car could be out, Mike?
Well, the safety car went out in Brazil. It's an innovation in Grand Prix.
Yeah, we better explain what it means.
Well, the safety car goes out if there is debris or a stalled car on the track, as there was in Brazil. The competitors line up behind it with the leader first behind it. It goes around until the debris has been cleared. Then it goes in. And they don't stop the clocks or the race, it's still on, but everybody closes up. You see, and in Brazil, Senna was able to close up to Damon Hill and eventually pass him and win. And I would confidently predict that the safety car will be out today for the second time in history.
Let's have a look at the grid and your comments on that. Nice to see Damon on the front row there.
Yes, and with his teammate Alain Prost, and there's very little doubt that one of them will get into the first corner first. The real excitement is going to be where Senna and Schumacher will get into the first corner. Schumacher has not got this technical device, traction control on his car, which is going to make it much more difficult for him to get away. But the sensation of practice yesterday was Carl Wendlinger in the Sauber, and his teammate JJ Leto, the Swedish driver in the second Sauber, was second fastest today in the wet, and I predict that they will go extremely well. Mario Andretti, who is sixth on the grid, has really got it all to prove, because he's only done 3 racing laps in 2 Grand Prix so far, and he's got a lot of pressure on him.
Okay, let's just turn our thoughts away from today's race just for a moment, because the past week, as Murray knows very well, has seen the 25th anniversary of the untimely death of a driver widely acknowledged as one of the all-time motor racing greats.
To me, Jimmy Clark is the best-born driver in the world. And the thing that surprises me about him is how fast he's come up. It was only a few years ago when nobody had heard of Jim Clark.
Who better than Stirling Moss to praise Jim Clark, the quiet Scottish farmer who in his 9-year Grand Prix career won 2 World Championships and the respect of everyone to become a legend in motor racing history. In 1963, he won 7 times to secure his first championship.
People seem to think that it's just a matter of being scatterbrained and having nerves of steel to drive around faster than anyone else. But personally, I don't agree with either of those things. Firstly, because I'm at heart a very nervous person, and secondly, I think that to drive very fast around a circuit requires a tremendous amount of self-control, because the limit of driving very fast and going over the limit takes a tremendous amount of concentration.
In 1965, Clark became champion again, driving, as always, for Lotus, forming one of the greatest ever partnerships with the charismatic Colin Chapman. It was a partnership that dominated Formula One, Clark's smooth style gaining him 25 victories. But it was at Indianapolis in 1965 that Clark, Lotus and Ford created history, standing the American establishment on its ear by winning the world's greatest motor race. Never before had one of these funny little cars with the engine at the back finished first at Indy, but Jim did it to become an American hero and the man who, with Chapman, transformed racing in the US of A.
He was one of the greatest drivers that we or anybody else who's followed motor racing over the years has ever seen. And though it's very difficult to compare drivers from different eras, I think the record book would show that he ranks among the greatest that the world has ever seen.
Murray, the word great can get bandied about a bit too freely, but Graham Hill there and everybody else's tributes to the great Scot. He was great.
Yeah, there was an aura about Jim Clark that very few other drivers have ever had. He was a modest, quite introverted, enormously likeable chap. And he had this incredible talent, Bob, of being able to drive round any problems that there were in the car. He wasn't a great technician, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense at all, but if you put him in a car and something went wrong with it, he would just smoothly drive around the problem. And he had some of the most amazing wins and non-wins in the history of the sport because of that talent.
Okay, Murray, thanks very much. We'll hear from you, of course, throughout the afternoon, but just go outside here at Donington and pick up some of the scenes, because there's been a very interested observer in the pit area, and that's Her Royal Highness Princess Diana, and her presence has certainly added to this very special day in the history of Donington Park. There she is. It would be lovely if she could see a British victory in the shape of Damon Hill. Well, let me also remind you that this afternoon here on Grandstand, we're obviously concentrating on the Grand Prix, but we'll also be looking forward to the World Gymnastics Championships, which come to this country for the first time. They start at the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham on Tuesday, 6 days of competition. And we'll also have coverage of the third round of the Masters with Bernard Langer leading the way, a European leader. But we're about 45 minutes away from the start of this European Grand Prix, the third round of the Formula One season. It started in South Africa just 4 weeks ago.
Go, away they go. Senna's got a superb start. Schumacher comes up. Damon Hill is into second. Senna's done it. Senna's taken the lead. And look at that, a spin. It's Damon Hill. He's overdone it. Prost goes through. Andretti's been left at the start. It's all happening here at Kyle Army. Prost goes for it. Senna moves across. Prost goes to the right. Prost was maybe trying to serve a dummy to Senna, in which case the Brazilian outthought him.
I must say, the Williams looks very, very impressive. The power of the Renault, and that's Hill going off with Zanardi.
Ah, here's a replay. Now, there goes the Larousse. And as you can see, Damon Hill was already in front of Zanardi, and I do apologise if anybody thought I was saying anything against Hill, because it was clearly Zanardi trying to dive through on the inside of Damon's Williams, Zanardi in the Lotus, that caused the problem.
Prost having another go. Prost is alongside Senna. Nose in front. And Prost is through.
And there's Berger. Berger is out. Gerhard Berger goes off. Oh, my goodness. Prost looks like winning second. Senna looks like finishing second. They're both a lap ahead of Mark, who is in third place. And Warwick is still staying ahead of Leighton as Prost tiptoes out of the last corner of South African Grand Prix and wins it. Brazilian Grand Prix in the go. Prost gets away. There was a very quick start at the back, but leading into the first corner, it's Alain Prost, and Ayrton Senna goes on the inside and takes second.
Michael Andretti went off on the... Well, there you see Michael Andretti off on the outside, and that'll be a big disappointment for him. A very short Brazilian Grand Prix as Ayrton Senna got inside Damon Hill, and I think Senna will leave his braking very, very late. Hill can dominate the corner from there, and Hill has done it. And that was good driving because Senna didn't give way easily. I was surprised Senna didn't go to the inside of the track all the way up the straight then to force Hill the long way round.
And there is Prost. Prost has gone off. Well, this is quite amazing. And Senna is challenging for the lead, and Senna leads. Oh, Senna uses all his superior experience and takes the lead in the Brazilian Grand Prix from Damon Hill. And it will be his 37th Grand Prix win, and Ayrton Senna, to the delirious delight of his countrymen, wins in Brazil in his own time. Slows right down. This is the best thing that could possibly have happened for Grand Prix racing.
Well, I've been joined here at Donington by Mario Andretti, who was world champion, Mario, back in 1978. Father, of course, of Michael Andretti, and a teammate of Nigel Mansell now in the Newman Haas team. And at 53 years of age, I know you don't mind my saying it, still a winner, because we were thrilled that you won last weekend.
Well, it was really a very exciting win for me because I wanted so badly to win in the 90s. It's a decade I hadn't won in yet, and so I know I had some missed opportunities, and of course finished second to Michael about 5 or 6 times, so I sent him away to Formula One. I figured he'd be leaving me alone there, and this victory obviously came with a lot of luck, which sometimes also feels good because I've not had extremely good luck, you know, so as I say, I'm savoring it, and it's a good start for the season for us.
British racing fans, of course, are so interested in Nigel Mansell. He's made a big impact there, probably the wrong word, but in winning a big impact, and then, of course, in what was his first accident.
Well, that's very unfortunate, obviously, but it's one of those things, you know, it happened to all of us one time or another, and Just lucky that as hard of an impact that he's had against the wall, that he just came away with just a headache, so to speak. And
you expect
and we all know that the oval tracks don't forgive very well, because if you go off in a very innocent spin, you know what collects you usually is a concrete barrier, and usually they're very, very hard.
You expect him to succeed, Mario, do you? He's quick,
yeah.
Isn't he?
Of course, yeah. Nigel is very quick and extremely capable, so I'm not surprised that he's going as well as he is. He's had great preparation by the team. He arrived there. He's done ample testing prior to the season, so I think his confidence level is up.
Let's talk about your son, Michael. He's finding it quite difficult adapting to Formula One.
Well, I'm not saying, I don't think that's really accurate in a sense, because he's had a bit of a cloud hanging over his head with no start in South Africa with a clutch problem, and then of course this unfortunate incident in Brazil, which we just saw a moment ago. But as far as adapting, it's a matter of him just getting enough laps, enough mileage under his belt to feel comfortable with the car.
He qualifies so confidently, doesn't he?
Well, he takes it to the limit, but he's not totally sure. That's why he has a spin now and then. But you know, he's really testing himself, and if anything, he's very impatient himself by nature. So, you know, he wants to excel immediately. So I just hope that he has the opportunity to just get a proper race under him, and then the following event, and so on and so on, and he can just relax and do the work the way he knows how to do it, and then he'll start having some fun.
How much of Michael is natural ability, or is it Dad's experience and skill?
No, I don't think. I would like to take credit, but I don't think I have much to do with that. I think Michael has possessed a lot of ability himself, a lot of natural ability, no question. And as I say, I think he's where he wants to be in Formula One. He's with a phenomenal team. So I envy him in a way, because if I was 20 years younger, probably I would try this again. So.
Do you get nervous or uptight watching Michael?
Oh yes, I'm a terrible spectator, the worst, in fact.
But so, you're down here in the pit area with him today.
Well, I am, yes, but I'm much more relaxed when I do my own racing.
What about your own next race?
Well, I look forward to it. Of course, it's in Long Beach, California next weekend, and Long Beach has been quite good to me, in fact, and Michael, for that matter. For some reason or other, we've scored very well there, and I just hope I can keep this momentum going that we've had. The team is great behind us. I think the preparation is impeccable. Our Ford Cosworth engines really come into their own now. So, you know, with all these ingredients going for us, I just hope we can put it together.
Great to see you. Congratulations on your win. And we'll be hoping also that you enjoy your day here for Michael as well.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mario. Well, now let's concentrate again on this afternoon's Grand Prix and hear a little bit about this circuit and two drivers who particularly are looking forward to the race. The winners of the first two races, Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna.
Well, I have good memories from Donington because I raced here in other classes, Formula Fords, Super Fords, Formula 3s. I won here some races, and I also happen to have driven for the very first time a Formula 1 car in my career here at Donington, just a couple of days after the British Grand Prix back in 1983. It was a Williams then. So I have good memories, and I've been here testing a few occasions with the Formula 1, with Lotus, Renault, Lotus, Honda with active suspension. But it's been, I think, 5 years since I was here last, 5, 6 years.
It's a kind of track where you can do almost what you want if you're leading the race, and it's a bit like Monaco. And but I think the race will be difficult also considering the weather, and if you need to stop for the tires because the pit lane is very narrow, and it's going to be a lot of stress during the race.
I always had tremendous good results in wet conditions or adverse conditions. Now, that doesn't mean that I like it, because as you know, as a driver, situations like those can really catch you. And it's very uncertain in this situation. I don't like that feeling. But looking at a different way, if conditions are stable and all nice, all predictable, Williams is well ahead and no hope, basically. That's what I feel. So in order that you can have some hope, you got to have some question marks in it, whereby you get situations where you make a decision, and if you do it right, you get a big plus. If you do it wrong, too bad, you know. But in those conditions, then you have a chance. And if you're looking for not only a podium, but also victory, you need uncertainty. And hope you make better decision than the competition.
If the conditions are changing all the time, if dry or wet, I mean, that's a typical tactical race. That was a tactical race in Brazil, because we had no race on the wet in Brazil. I mean, almost no race. I mean, we had a big storm, and then we had the pace car, and then only maybe 2 or 3 laps with the wet tires, and then they changed for the slicks. I don't call that a wet race. In this condition, it's more the tactical side, and I hope to be better than I was in Brazil.
It's a lot more difficult to overtake here than it is in Brazil.
Sure.
I don't know if it is as difficult as South Africa.
To take the good line, you must go as far as possible to the wide part of the corner. So you have the hairpin. Very tight hairpin.
On the way down the hill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have also maybe this corner, the corner after the pits,
yes,
where it's possible. Part of that, even at the end of the straight, I think it's going to be very, very difficult, because it's narrow and it's very, very tight corner. So if you have the car who is overtaken, being a little bit more in the middle of the road, then you have a bigger risk of having a crash.
You got to take in consideration not only the technical aspect of a racing car, but also the character, the personality involved with you, its characteristics, and so on. It's a game, and you have to play the game considering all the ingredients.
Well, we're just about 25 minutes away now from the European Grand Prix. It's still very damp. It's a little bit brighter out there. It really was pouring with rain around about, well, between 9:30 and about 10:30 this morning. But the atmosphere here is building, and there is a big, big crowd considering those awful conditions. We've seen the Princess of Wales, and there's another interested fan in the pit area, King Hussein of Jordan there, and he's being guided around by Jackie Stewart, 3 times world champion back in 1969, 1971 and 1973. King Hussein of Jordan. The British flags are out, and there is the man they particularly hope would get his first ever Grand Prix victory. Damon Hill, second in the second Grand Prix of the season in Brazil. A very sensible and brilliant ride behind Ayrton Senna. And we can take an even closer look at this Donington circuit, 76 laps of this 2.5-mile track through the eyes of Damon Hill. He knows it so well from various stages of his single-seater career. This is the driver's view.
Okay, well, the lap starts with Goddard's corner, and you can see the road drops down, so it's quite tricky to see the line, but it's very important to get a good exit out of there so that you're quick along the straight. And braking for Redgate corner very hard and very deep into the corner, braking into the corner a bit. Important to get a good exit now coming down the Craner curves, which are really the most exciting, spectacular part of the circuit, along with this corner coming up, which is the old hairpin, which is nothing like a hairpin. It's actually 5th gear in qualifying. Very fast indeed. So the fast, sweepy part of the circuit, really, this is, and that there on McLean's corner was the only bump on the circuit virtually. It's a very smooth circuit. Coppice corner, you cannot see the actual part of the track that I'm on now before you get to the corner, so that's totally blind. The car crosses over a crown in the road, which makes the cars dart across the track. Through the chicane, it's quite an easy chicane. You can't use the curbs, but have to accelerate hard. Traction is important. Brakes are very important at this part. The slowest part of the circuit, 2nd gear, and traction again is very important on the exit. This is where our traction control system really comes into play, and back to
start another lap at Goddard's hairpin and over the start-finish line. And now from the driver's perspective, my head is bobbling about because of the aerodynamic buffeting. We're very much lower in the car, and that changes the view, and you can see that you cannot see the apex of the crane of curves just coming into that corner. Now you're diving down into a compression at the old hairpin, changing from left to right all the time, so the G-forces are throwing you across one way and then the other. Braking very deep now from McLean's. This is a bump. That's the only bump on the circuit, as I said. From the car point of view, that upsets it. You cannot see where to turn in. The curb is there. You're on top of it before you even turn in. And a bit of a chance to relax on the straight, but bracing yourself again for very heavy braking, down to second gear, over the curbs. The car is very much upset. We've a lot of kickback through the steering wheel. Nearly finishing the lap. Very important to get this corner right. It's very tricky. You can see all the people watching you there at the fence. It's like a zoo, and you're on display. Very important again, the last corner, the road drops away, difficult to see the apex, easy to lose the car. And that's just 2 laps of Donington, and this afternoon we've got 76 to complete.
Damon Hill's view, and I can tell you he's just left the pit area, Damon Hill. He's out on the circuit at the moment, under half an hour to go, feverish activity, great anticipation for this European Grand Prix. Let's enjoy the final build-up with our commentary team of Jonathan Palmer, who will be in the pit area, and James Hunt in the commentary box, as always, alongside Murray Walker.
This is a great occasion for British motor racing. I can tell you with humility that I feel like an excited schoolboy. A Grand Prix at Donington again after 55 years, evoking memories of the Auto Unions which won in 1937 and 38, and the Mercedes-Benz Silver Arrows which challenged them. And I have some, what you may regard as amazing views for you. My view is that the weather conditions now are just about perfect for a truly exciting race. You may find that rather surprising, considering that we've had lashing rain all morning and the circuit is still wet. But the good news is that it is undoubtedly brightening. As you can see from the German and the Brazilian flags there that were supporting Schumacher and Ayrton Senna, there is a stiff breeze blowing. The Donington pluperfect track surface dries out very quickly indeed, and I think we are going to get what I would call a wet-dry race. The cars will probably come out on slicks, although we've still got 20 minutes or so before the start, you see. When the race begins, I expect the track to dry out. They'll have to come in and take on slick tires if they've started on wets. That's going to make it very interesting. There are forecasts that there might be 1 or 2 rain showers during the race, in which case they'll have to come in and take on rain tires again, which I'm calling wets. So we're in for an exciting and unpredictable race. But with the news that fastest in the warm-up this morning was Damon Hill, and that the warm-up was in a half an hour of practicing in dreadful conditions, Damon Hill was quickest. But most excitingly and most significantly, J.J. Leto was second fastest, the Swedish driver, in the Sauber car, and he is a dark horse for this race without a doubt. So, Donington, it is the same shape roughly as before the war now. They start where you see the checkered flag, go down to Redgate, the sweeping right-hander, which is a 3rd gear corner. They exited at about 80 miles an hour, accelerate up into the tremendously spectacular Craner curves, and the spectators can see all the way from the Craner curves to the McLean hairpin in the top right corner, and they go through the old hairpin there at about 115 miles an hour, accelerate up to 170, down to 190 for McLean's, up to 155 on the approach to Coppice Corner, which they take at about 95, down to the S's, the fastest part of the course, about 180 miles an hour, stand on the brakes, 55 miles an hour, 2nd gear through the S's, then they drop downhill to the Melbourne hairpin, and 165 miles an hour, down to 35 miles an hour in just a few yards. It has to be seen to be believed. a 180-degree bend corner, up to about 140, 150 miles an hour before the second gear left-hander at Goddard. And that is a 2.5-mile lap of Donington. And the Drivers' Championship at the present moment headed by Ayrton Senna, unexpectedly, I have to tell you, after a brilliant win in Brazil and a second place in South Africa. Alain Prost, who we all expected to dominate the championship, a victory in South Africa, 10 points, and a failure to finish because he went off in Brazil. Damon Hill, after only 2 Grand Prix in a car that he could do well in, this is his 5th Grand Prix altogether, 3rd equal in the championship with another British driver, Mark Blundell. And then in 5th position, Michael Schumacher, ahead of an equal 6th, Herbert and Fittipaldi. And the Constructors' Championship, well, that is very interesting, and again, totally unexpected, because equal first are McLaren and Williams with 16 points. And that's all of them for McLaren, scored by Ayrton Senna, because Michael Andretti has yet to do his 4th lap in a Grand Prix, and he has driven in 2 so far. And as you see, Ligier, who are very much reviving themselves this year, are in 3rd position, which is again unexpected. 2 British drivers, to the disgust of France, because Cyril de Rouvre, the new owner of Ligier, decided he was going to go for experienced talent and went there for Martin Brundle and Mark Blundell, the commentator's nightmare. And you can see that's one of the Minardi cars coming around there, assembling on the grid now, with, in pole position, Alain Prost. Prost does not like the wet, the real wet, and he makes no secret about it. He says in conditions like it is now, that is to say damp and drying, he's very happy. But when he gets a real downpour, he doesn't like it. And I remember he had a lot of criticism once of the British Grand Prix in Silverstone for pulling out of the race. He said he thought it was madness to go on, and retired. Damon Hill alongside him. It's the 2nd successive race in which Williams Renault cars, and let's not forget the Renault part of the equation, Damon Hill, son of the great Graham Hill, and his mother Betty, and his 2 sisters Bridget and Samantha are here to watch him today in what could well be his first victory. And behind him, the Renault engine, some 800 horsepower. And Damon, for the first time, is driving in a Grand Prix car that could win a race on a circuit that he knows well. So, 2nd row of the grid, Michael Schumacher, who was delighted to beat Ayrton Senna yesterday. Then the Sauber of Wendlinger, the McLaren of Andretti, 5th and 6th. The 2nd Sauber, J.J. Leto, 7th, and Gerhard Berger in the 1st Ferrari, 8th. John Alesi in the 2nd Ferrari, 9th. With Riccardo Patrese rather well down the grid, 10th position in the Benetton. Johnny Herbert, highest in 11th position. Then Rubens Barrichello, the Brazilian driver, who has made a real mark for himself here at Donington. Only 20 years old, but a very mature young man. And so on. Thierry Boutsen, that you see there disappearing through the caption, is well down in 19th place. Mark Blundell and Martin Brundle are 21st and 22nd. They've had a lot of handling problems with the Ligier Renault, and they have not put them right. And Ferrari have had there's the McLaren of Ayrton Senna. You see the bottom right corner of your screen, just emerging from the McLaren garage. Now, Senna has got a horsepower disadvantage compared with the Williams Renaults in front of him. He is pressing very hard indeed. Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Wales, a very welcome guest here at Donington. As far as I know, the first Grand Prix she will have seen. John Quemby of the RAC, sorry, Ma, you're a racing car coming down very fast behind you, and that's Michael Schumacher, who is just motored by. Little realising who he's passed, I've no doubt. And I keep looking up at the sky, and I keep seeing it getting marginally brighter. I am very optimistic, and Alain Prost will be very hopeful that it gets better. There is the 3 times world champion, the man who has won more Grand Prix and scored more Grand Prix World Championship points than anybody in the history of the sport. The first man to reach 500 points, the first man to reach 600 points, the first man to reach 700 points. And now Alain Prost driving as number 0, incidentally, because the number 1 is always traditionally carried by the world champion, the reigning world... Oh, sorry, Prost number 2, Damon Hill is 0, and the reigning world champion, of course, is Nigel Mansell, who's recovering from his crash at Phoenix. So, Alain Prost, then just slightly behind him, but still on the front row of the staggered grid, his teammate, Damon Hill. Damon Hill, 32 years old. There's a lovely story about Prost. He was given the choice of whether he would be 0 or 2, and he said, who wants to be a 0? And so Damon Hill has got that figure, but I certainly wouldn't accuse him of being that in the sense of the phrase. And Damon has settled down wonderfully well. He's had enormous pressure on him. A lot of it has been resolved by his superb drive in Brazil, when he actually led the race for a long time when the safety car was out. I'm not at all sure that my confident prediction that the safety car would be out in this race is going to be realized now that the weather conditions are improving. But Damon Hill, considering the eyes in the top right corner of the screen are those of Adrian Newey, who is the chief designer of the Williams team. Michael Schumacher. And Schumacher is starting from 3rd position on the grid, just ahead of Ayrton Senna, and absolutely elated about it. He's driving, he's with Frank Durney, the Benetton technician, and the new Benetton is being driven by Schumacher and Riccardo Patrese. It has all the systems except, notably, traction control. It does not have the traction control which prevents the drivers from getting any wheel spin, and Benetton were not at all happy about that situation earlier today, because with the course practically awash with water, they wanted every help they could get. 3 times world champion Ayrton Senna, unarguably one of the greatest racing drivers of all time, driving the McLaren Ford. We've got so used to saying the McLaren Honda, but this year, of course, Ayrton Senna, 33 years old, from Sao Paulo in Brazil, which is where he won for the 2nd time his home Grand Prix 2 weeks ago, and he's driving in his 145th Grand Prix this year. Record number of pole positions, 61 of them, compared with the 23 of Alain Prost, who is in pole position today. And I don't think Senna will actually be too unhappy about the course conditions, but he will be very unhappy about his 4th place on the grid, because that is Karl Wendlinger, the Austrian, who in my opinion is as good as Michael Schumacher, but has not had the opportunity to prove it. Well, now he has, because he's in the Sauber car, and he's starting from his highest ever position on the grid, number 29, the V10 Ilmor-powered Sauber. And on the side of the black monocoque, there are the very significant words, concept by Mercedes-Benz, because Mercedes, the mighty empire, is behind the scenes of the Sauber organization. Mario Andretti, the greatest racing dad of all time, 53 years old, talking to his son Michael, who will be hoping that he does much better than he did in Brazil, where he had Gerhard Berger drive into him at colossal velocity through no fault of either driver. And in South Africa, he had a clutch failure, stalled at the start, only did 3 laps, came into the pits on 3 wheels, having had a collision. That's Ron Dennis bending over the rear wing at the back, the top man of McLaren, who has built this team into the mighty motor racing force that it is today. And McLaren have now won their 100th Grand Prix, only 3 behind the all-time record of Ferrari. And McLaren, of course, have been racing far less than Ferrari, who were in the first 1950 World Championship Grand Prix at Silverstone and have been in every one since. This is the 2nd Sauber of J.J. Leto, the brilliant Swedish driver, who at last has got the machinery to prove his talent. There he is, an extremely likeable, cheerful, chap who is very much on a high now that he's got a decent car. And the sticking plaster is, I think I just said that JJ Leiter is Swedish, so before all the Finnish viewers phone in to tell me he's Finnish, I better correct myself. JJ Leiter is Finnish. And there is the Austrian Gerhard Berger, probably the man with the best developed sense of humour in Grand Prix racing. His sense of humour isn't always appreciated by his victims, but he is a great chap. And he voluntarily gave up his position in McLaren after 2 or 3 seasons last year, having won the last race for them, and went to Ferrari, partly because of money, admittedly, but also because he had the chance to develop the new car. With John Barnard, who is here today, the Ferrari designer. And John Barnard, that's Jean Alesi, who looks a lot better than he did on Friday. It was a very pasty-faced, ashen Jean Alesi who sat in his car on Friday, suffering from a very heavy bout of flu. And he went off the course at great speed at Redgate, and I said I thought the active suspension had probably just jacked him off it. And John Barnard rather indignantly said to me today, you weren't to know it, but he actually got his foot trapped behind the brake and the accelerator and couldn't get it free. So apologies. Riccardo Patrese, a man who drove for Williams for so many years and achieved several victories with them, is today driving for the Benetton team. Starts from 10th position on the grid. He is the most experienced Grand Prix driver of all time. As you can see, he's driven in 242. His first Grand Prix was in 1977, driving for the Shadow team. And he's driven for quite a few since then, Riccardo Patrese, because he's driven for Brabham, Alfa Romeo, Arrows. He's with Benetton, of course. That's Ross Brawn, the chief designer in the glasses, and the impish Johnny Herbert, who, if Gerhard Berger has got the best developed sense of humour in Grand Prix racing, Johnny Herbert is not very far behind him. And he's driving the Lotus 107, which has active suspension, Ford V8 engine, and the Lotus Revival is almost complete. They have a fine designer in Chris Murphy. Peter Wright and Peter Collins are heading up the team technically and in managerial terms. They've just recruited Trevor Foster from the Jordan team. Guy Edwards looks after all their sponsorship needs, which means getting the money on which Formula One lives. And they have a very fine driver in Johnny Herbert. I've said before, and I have no hesitation in saying again, this is a world champion in the making. So Johnny Herbert is in the 2nd position for a British driver on the grid in 11th place. Derek Warwick in the new FA14 Footwork Mugen car is 14th on the grid. The car is very new and it's still suffering from teething problems. Mark Blundell and Martin Brundle in the Ligier Renaults are well down the ladder. They're 21st and 22nd. And in the pits, as ever for us, is Jonathan Palmer. What's the news?
Well, I think everybody down here is on wet tyres. The tyre warmers are over them, though, but the real action is down at the McLaren car of Michael Andretti. They've got a radiator leak, and they're in the middle of the fastest radiator change I've ever seen. I think they will achieve it.
Well, poor Michael, he certainly seems to have the most appalling luck in terms of getting away at a Grand Prix. As I said earlier on, he had his clutch fail at the start in South Africa. He was driven into by Gerhard Berger in Brazil. Now he has a radiator leak problem, which is dreadful for him because he's starting very well up on the grid, and he was 4th fastest this morning.
Yes, in a funny way, this sort of a drama, as long as they can get it fixed in time, is just the thing he needs to relax, because of those 2 earlier starts this season with a dragging clutch in South Africa and the shunt in Brazil that Mario's mentioned. Michael Andretti has been under a lot of pressure here, and you know, not pleasant pressure, because he's come over expected to do well, and a wet start for him is not the sort of starting he's used to. Remember, in his Indy-type kart racing over in America, they have rolling starts,
He's done standing starts, of course, before, but he's not as au fait with them as everybody else here. And this start is vitally important that he gets away, gets it round the first corner and goes racing. Now, when you've got a distraction, like a problem of the car and the mechanics all panicking around, it does have the side effect of rather relaxing the driver, because it distracts you from the pure pressure and just sitting there on the grid waiting for the minutes to tick away. So Michael Andretti may just be grateful for this panic, so long as they can get it fixed.
You probably noticed that Michael Andretti had got some black tank tape across the bottom of his visor. That is literally a breath deflector to stop the warm air from his nose and the moist air from his mouth going up onto the inside of the visor. There it is. It's mighty chilly out there today, and the temperature differential between the outside of the visor and the inside can very easily create misting. And those of you who ride motorcycles will know that that is a big, big problem, which you can overcome by lifting the visor, but then you've got a gigantic draft blowing around your eyeballs, which makes them water and makes it difficult for you to see. Alain wears a special kind of helmet which has got an air extractor on the top of it.
Yes, and you'll see there the black tape across the bottom of the visor hole. There's a little thing poking forward, and that is to hold the visor off, closing. There it is. And that is one of the ways of keeping the visor clear. And it is a big, big problem in these conditions. You've got a lot of physical work going on inside the driver's helmet and suit by him. A lot of huffing and puffing, therefore. And steaming up visors is really, it's an art form in itself, how to keep your visor clear, and of course an essential one.
Since we came on the air, which is quite a while now, there has been no rain. The breeze is continuing to blow and to help dry out the circuit. I'm going to be very interested as they go round on the parade lap to see how close to see how dry the course is, because a good start is essential here. Any Grand Prix circuit is difficult to pass on. People say, and I'm one of them, that there are some that are exceptionally difficult, like Hungary and Monaco and Kyalami. Any Grand Prix circuit is difficult because there is only one maximum speed racing line, and Donington is actually a lot easier to pass on than most people thought it was going to be.
And Alain Prost just waiting, nothing but tension in the car, thinking about his start, trying to relax. And here we go on the lap recorded yesterday with Alain Prost around Donington Park. First corner, Redgate, third gear. And onto the apex, see the front wheels working away, sliding into the car, full power out. Now the Craner curves taken absolutely flat out, going up through the gearbox and arriving down here at some 180 miles an hour onto the brakes, dab of the brakes through the old hairpin. Very, very quick right-hand, a very difficult one. This is flat, right up through the gearbox, and then brakes now for McLean, down through the gearbox to fourth gear, accelerating up the hill into fifth, back down to fourth. He turns right over the blind brow into Coppice Corner. This is the important one onto the straight. Very difficult entry because you can't see the apex as you from the turn-in point. Now onto the brakes for the second gear S's, little chicane. Boot full out, the traction control we'll hear quite a lot of today with the engines apparently misfiring. Down on the brakes, down to second gear. Hairpin, some people even possibly using first in. And then away the hill again, acceleration, hard onto the brakes, down into Goddard's, which is the final corner. And there we are, completes the lap and over the start-finish line. And that's what it looks like in the dry, but it won't look like that for the first part of the race today.
Forecast for the start, well, the track is damp. Alain Prost is not worried about this sort of wet condition. We've got a camera on his car and Damon Hill's and the two Benettons and the two Ferraris and the two McLarens. So that, and that's what the camera is looking at. So you can see that the track ahead of Prost is glistening damp on the approach to Redgate, which they will hit even from the standstill at about 140 miles an hour. So now here in Britain, the world is joining us at Donington to watch the European Grand Prix of 1993. Britain's second Grand Prix for a very, very long time, and very well deserved indeed. And no better place to have it than Donington.